Good Tavach, Shavua Tov, a good week. We start a new week. It is Kislev, Chav Kislev, giving us the light and the life for our neshama, for our lives. We go into a week that Wednesday night will begin Chanukah, and we're learning about Chanukah. So, what did we learn? Is that the Greeks, the Assyrian Greeks, could not accept the Jewish approach to learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. The Greeks were very much into human culture, intellect, and the Jews, in all of their mitzvahs, even the logical ones, they ultimately do it because of Hashem, because God. That's what God commanded. It's His command. Right? Even if there's any little reasoning or logic to a particular mitzvah, ultimately it's a logic that stems from God. God gives us a logic to something or reasons to something, so then that we can incorporate our mind in serving God. But it's all about the service. It's not that the intelligence is separate from the mitzvah. So based on that, the Talmud tells us, so what did they do, the Greeks? They entered the Heichal, the sanctuary, right? And they defiled the oil in the Heichal. So sanctuary, as we explained, represents Bina, understanding. The oil represents Chachma, beyond. The power of what? The power that's beyond human intelligence. As it is in the individual, Chachma, right, is that the lightning rod that goes off in our minds that when, oh, Eureka, I got it, got the idea, right? What you have is a flash of the intelligence that's a source of intelligence, but yet it's beyond it yet at that point. The Heichal, the sanctuary, is understanding. It's a home of God. Home is built with building blocks, and that's what Bina is, the building blocks of understanding. Okay. Now, so, this is all right, the beauty of what's going on over here is like it's playing out on a metaphoric spiritual level, a truth that was happening in simplistic terms. Right. The oil represents this, the heichal, so the oil representing that which is beyond rationale. And that's what they came to defile. That's what the sages say. Now they defiled the sanctuary just the same, but as our sages say, is that they defiled specifically the oil representing, as oil rises above all liquids, So representing that which is beyond intelligence. And that affected the Jews. That the Greek way. As a matter of fact, there were, a certain element of the Jewish people that became what we call misyavnim. They became uh, Hellenistic. They were Hellenized. And even those that were not, there was an effect. Well, an effect in the fact that they literally impurified the oil that was in the sanctuary, right? Therefore, to fight back the Greeks, you can't use, uh, you can't fight fire with fire. In other words, they're using intelligence. So we'll use our intelligence to fight back, whether it's a debate with them, or just commitment because, I've committed my life to this Judaism and they're fighting against Judaism. So it makes sense logically and rationally that I'm going to fight them back. And I'll do it in a rational way. My approach will be rational. No. All intellectual engagement to fight them back could not even be on a level of intellectually justifiable holiness, right? What are they against? They're against a concept that's something beyond. Holiness is beyond, right? Commitment, that's something that is beyond anything that's rational. Well, the only option the Jews had was to completely bypass the intellect and to show their commitment to God. That's based on self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice means over here that it's not rational at all. Not irrational, but supra-rational. Right? That comes from the yechida, from the essence of the soul. Okay, because those are words. What does that mean? How does that reflect? How does that express itself? How does it express itself? First of all, they had a very small army and a very weak army against the enormous, mighty Greek army. Right? To fight that's not rational. And it's not like they had a plan. Okay, we're very small, but we've got um, a plan on how we can defeat them. No, losing was simply not an option. It's interesting. It's exactly where Israel is today, right? For the Jewish people, losing is simply not an option. So this is how Matisyahu and his sons, how they demonstrated themselves. And that inspired other Jews to join the ranks in this manner. It wasn't logical, it didn't make sense. They didn't have a strategy, a Napoleonic strategy on how they're going to be victorious. Is that losing is not an option. We're not doing this out of our out of a rational, logical, and this is, no. Total commitment to God in such a way that there's no other avenue. There's nothing else that can be done. This kind of commitment, it comes from the core essence of the soul, brought about the miracle that allowed them to win the war and take back the base of Mikdash. What did they first do? Take back? They purified the sanctuary, but they couldn't find any pure oil. Everything was ransacked and destroyed, defiled. Actually, it wasn't destroyed necessarily, but defiled. It's a different, in other words, every jar of oil had which was a jar that was enough to light the menorah, the candelabra, for a day, had the seal of the high priest. They just destroyed the seal. Not like they poured out all of the oil and then lit a fire to destroy the sanctuary. They didn't do that. They just defiled it by merely opening it and making it impure. So, meaning they purified the sanctuary, that's fine. Which, remember, the sanctuary represents spiritually Bina, understanding. Oh, okay. Having a home, having a community place of gathering. Okay. Sanctuary. That's what it represented. There's some level of appreciation, understanding, and rationality to that, but not the olive oil. No, that represented beyond rationale, right? As we explained, chachma. We translate chachma as wisdom, but that's not what it means over here. It doesn't mean wisdom the way we understand it. Beyond, right? But then they finally found one jar that was sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest, meaning it was still pure. And they only found one because, again, the story, the narrative plays out on a storyline simplistically, but it actually represents something that is a metaphor of the divine. And after all, everything that happens is only by the hands of heaven. So we can see clearly how heaven is engaged, how the divine is engaged, and it's reflected in the storyline in simplistic manner that reflects it in the esoteric mystical level. So they only found one. Why? Because the oneness of the soul. That's what that one jar represents. The essence of the soul. The ability to rise above the human condition. And what's the human condition? Human condition is that intelligence rules. Reason is what dictates. That's the human condition. But that's not the Jewish condition. So they fought in such a way that was beyond the human condition. There's no way they could win. But because their commitment was beyond that, God's condition, right? The essence of the soul, that there's no other alternative. We can't lose. And we are committed not because there's reason and logic to this, but this is what it is, and this is what we got to do, period. So that one, and therefore that one jar of olive oil that's pure with the seal of the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, able to overcome the impact of the Greeks and their intellect, and therefore they're able now to light the menorah, in a miraculous way. Wow. In a miraculous way. And now we will explain how the victory reversed the damage of the Greeks that had caused and led to a complete victory for the Jewish people. But this will, by the way, we understand something. I don't know if we're going to, we'll continue this in tomorrow's class, but this we understand something like phenomenal. If you notice, we won a war against the Greeks. We were few. We were weak. They were many and mighty. We're not celebrating the war's victory. What are we celebrating? A little cruise of olive oil that was found? And a miracle happened that it lit for not one day, but for 8 days? Let's bring this into modern, Jewish people win the 6-Day War against all of their enemies. 1967. And then we got the old city back. We got the Western Wall back. And we found, I don't know, we found a cruise of olive oil from way back, and now that's what we're celebrating. When the Talmud asks, what is Chanukah? It doesn't speak about it. It mentions the victory as a matter of course, but not what we are celebrating. Every other nation, every other human being would celebrate the national victory. They're not celebrating that. We're celebrating the miracle of God, because that's the miracle of the Jew. The winning is a human thing, even though it was beyond, right? Just like the 6-Day War was also miraculous. But, we won that victory against the Greeks, but guess what? About 200 years later, the sanctuary was completely destroyed by the Romans, who became the new Greeks, right? It was completely destroyed. So, yes, we won, but that's not what the Jew is about, the victory. That's what every nation is about. If you look at the history of the nations, this king defeated this nation, and, then 50 years later, they're defeated back, and so on and so forth. But Jews and Judaism, that's what it's about. It's about our connection to God. It's about being an eternal people. And the eternity is not in winning the war. Again, in the year 69, the temple was completely destroyed. The Jews were, taken in enslavement to Rome, many of them. There was a smattering left in the Holy Land. I mean, there was still left. But what do we celebrate? Our divine connection. And therefore, we celebrate this one jar of oil that a miracle happened. Because what was the miracle brought about? The miracle of the Jew, that we rise above the human condition. and we become a godly people, which we are, but we reflect that and express that and live that in the defeat against the Greeks and in the lighting of the menorah and the miracle that happens. So we're about God's miracle. That's who we are. And that's what we celebrate. That's the Jewish people. More to come on how that's further reflected. All right, we'll see. By Chumash Rashi, let you know that tonight, 6 o'clock till 8:30, we will be having a Chanukah symposium that will be on YouTube and on Facebook. It'll be on YouTube and on Facebook from 6 o'clock onwards. My wife is going to start teaching at 6. I'll be at 6:30 every half hour. Different teachers. We'll put up the flyer so you'll see it soon. Come and join us. It won't be on Zoom. It will only be again on social media. Thank you for joining.